Fantastic. Okay, so my name's Sophie. I'm one of the dietitians working at Queen Elizabeth Hospital with Miss Kuna and her team. So I'm very happy to be talking to you today. Thank you again for travelling such a long way. Yes, quite a nice central location in Birmingham. So I hope you get a chance to visit the lovely city afterwards. So we'll start with nutrition. So when we're thinking about having pouch surgery, so there are a couple of people who've indicated they are thinking about having pouch surgery. I just thought I'd just mention a few things because obviously you're going to speak to surgeons, you're in lots of appointments, there's lots of discussions about it, reading about it, research about it, and there's not that much out there about nutrition, funnily enough. It's all about after your surgery. So I just wanted to touch on planning a little bit for the surgery for those who are thinking about it. And then we'll talk about post-surgery, like straight afterwards, which most of you would have experienced. And then also thinking about healthy eating, so the long-term eating plans for people with pouches, and then problems. So we'll talk about the ideal scenario, and then we'll think about what issues people do tend to have. So I see them in clinics, and obviously there are some readmissions back to hospital, so it's more thinking about preventing problems and maybe thinking about other conditions that might get in the way, such as diabetes or heart issues that are affecting lots of people in the UK now. And also I'll think about a bit of signposting for if you want more information. But as Carol mentioned, I am here the whole day, so if anybody has specific questions, then I'll give you personalised advice. Okay. Excuse me. So when we're thinking about surgery, it is a big undertaking for your body to take. You're in lots of pain and difficulties, lots of symptoms going on, so food might be the last thing on your mind, but actually it is worthwhile just taking that extra time to think about how you can get your body in peak performance, ready for surgery. This is happening in lots of areas of surgery now. So we've got things like ERAS schemes, so it's early recovery after surgery. And lots of doctors are thinking about their nutrition of their patients before they go into the operating theatre and getting them as fit as possible. As I said, there's not too much out there on the internet at the moment, so here's a fantastic place to think about preparing for the surgery. Your symptoms can prevent you from eating a varied diet. You might find there's already trigger foods that you've noticed cause a problem, or you're just worried about having effects, or you've got appointments to get to, you're going to hospitals, therefore you don't want to have accidents and worries. So that all restricts on your dietary intake. So really, we want to think about protein. And luckily, it's quite a big a trend or a fad to have high protein foods, and they are all over the supermarkets at the moment. People can write high protein on the front of packaging, so it's a legal it's a label that you can add to foods because that's quite tightly regulated. So you need to think about those protein foods. So we're thinking meats and eggs and fish, dairy foods if you can tolerate them, vegetarian options if you're vegetarian, which will include things like tofu, corn, beans and things like that can be more problematic. So again, if there's any vegetarians or vegans, please talk to me later after the session because it can be more problematic. And then thinking about your vitamins and minerals, obviously fruits and vegetables can be a bit of a difficult issue for lots of people. So thinking about having them in a more blended way. So if we can get some of the fibres out of that fruits and vegetables and have them in things like soups and smoothies, you still get the vitamins from them. You can remove a lot of the pith or strain your soups if you want to. You still get the goodness and get those vitamins and minerals. And it's thinking about those sorts of foods, build up for surgery and making sure that you're well nourished as possible. So then we're thinking about after surgery, once you do have it, and lots of you will have had it. So straight after your surgery, you'll find that most people are on free fluids, clear fluids. They're not allowed to eat anything for several days, sometimes several weeks after surgery. So yeah, there's just being prepared for what happens after surgery and what to expect. So people's bowels can be very sluggish. It's what we call an ileus, and we still don't know why ileuses happen, but essentially when the surgeons are operating on people, the bowel can be a bit objective and just stop working. And this is where we take into other considerations different types of nutrition to make sure that you get your calories and your protein and your vitamins and minerals, but in different ways. Okay, so once you manage to get through the stages of clear fluids and free fluids, you might start on things like the nutritional supplements. Yeah, so the little bottles of energy drinks that have got lots of protein in them. The most concentrated one's got about 18 grams of protein, and that's the equivalent of a cooked breakfast squeezed into a little bottle. Okay, so when we're offering you those sorts of drinks, it's not because we're punishing you, it's because we really want you to improve your recovery times, get the muscles working again, get everything, the wounds healing, get all the inside anastomosis, everything healing nicely, so that we can get you home as quickly as possible. So these special drinks, I have to say, they don't taste great, and it's good to expect to understand what to expect when you drink them. And the reason for that is they do have minerals in them. Okay, so it's iron, magnesium, zinc, and they cause the taste in the back of your throat. So that's that sort of aftertaste that you have when you're drinking these energy drinks. But if we can try and get past that and understand why it's there. The companies have tried their best to cover up all the aftertaste, but they can't. It's important to have these minerals in the drink. So if you can get past that and have a little drink of something afterwards instead, just to wash it down, then that can help you with your recovery and getting those supplement drinks down. So again, we're thinking about high protein, we're thinking about those hospital menus, looking at the choices, what's going to be high protein to help me heal, and often we're thinking about low fibre. Okay, so this is quite a difficult issue in hospitals because we used to have things like the low fibre menus that would offer people, and that would give lots of confidence. You know that what you were choosing would be absolutely fine after surgery. So what we've done at the Queen Elizabeth is we recently carried out a project looking at the fibre content of all the hospital menu, and we were wondering if it has got vegetables in it, if it has got some onions in it in a meal, how much fibre does it actually contain? And we were quite pleasantly surprised that about 54% of the hospital menu, with all the options available, had a fibre intake of less than 3 grams of fibre per meal. So that was really positive. I was expecting a lot less. But it's still that navigating that we still really want to improve. Okay, so feedback from the patients, we've said that it's difficult to tell which options were suitable, which ones to choose. So we're working now with the catering company at the hospital to try and get a code put on the menu so that you can easily access it, and when you're choosing options you're confident that it's appropriate for you. And that counts for people who are going back into hospital for whatever reason. If they're having issues with their pouches, then they know they can have something low fibre whilst they're going through the motions of having relook examinations or going for scans. They might be having issues with a lack of controls and things like that, so they really want to restrict their fibre. We really want to help people in these ways to get the right catering facilities to that person at the right time. So when we're thinking about after surgery, going forwards, we've had sort of a few weeks of low fibre foods and really being careful of that anastomosis. So we're thinking about less fruits, less vegetables, not nuts and seeds and hard, tough skins, pips, that sort of thing. We were recommending to peel vegetables, peel fruits. But long term, what we do hope is that people can manage to bring fibre back into their diet again. So many people might have heard of the trending of fibre maxing at the moment. It's really big with younger generations looking at their gut health, okay? And gut health is all over a lot of the doctors' minds as well as people's minds in general. They want to preserve their guts. They want to look after their guts. They want to treat their guts. There's lots of probiotics as well that we'll cover. So lots and lots of information out there, and it's difficult to navigate all that. After surgery, there are lots of people who struggled with some foods and now they can manage their foods, you know, and that gives them more confidence when they're eating out or eating at friends' houses or preparing meals in their own kitchen, and they feel, you know, very, very happy that they can actually include foods again. And that's obviously the point of having this surgery done, so that you can have a better quality of life. When we're looking at healthy eating aspects, we're looking at about a third of your plate as protein, a third of your plate as carbohydrates, and a third of your plate as vegetables. But this can be problematic for people, and it can take a little while to build up to it. When you've been having no fibre to a third of your plate being a fibre, it's a big step. So what we always recommend people to do is increase it nice and gradually, introduce one new food at a time, start off with the nice cooked things like vegetables or stewed fruit, and then slowly build up to the fresh things, or even salads and fresh fruit with the skins on, if people can tolerate that. So it's slowly building up one at a time, and then if you have problems, you know what you've changed and you can relate back to it and understand your gut specifically. Everybody's different, and everyone's gut length is different, everyone's absorptive capacity is different for fibre, so it really is very tailored and personal to everybody. So if you can't tolerate a type of food, fine, okay, you've tested it, you've had an issue with it, put it aside, but don't think that that's it, you can't have it forever. Try it again in maybe 6 months' time, even a year's time, because the gut can adapt. Okay, and what we've seen now with this big gut microbiome and the focus on the colon, well, actually, there's still a mini gut microbiome, if you like, around the pouch, because it's still got access to the exit. So there's a microbiome situation in every orifice that we have. So naturally, one will form in your pouch as well. So, you know, if you don't tolerate one type of food, give it a miss, but try it again in 6 months or a year's time. So when we're thinking about a healthy weight for people to keep at, body mass index is quite a good guide, but it's not the perfect guide for everybody. So if you're finding that your BMI is a little bit high for your height, then what you can do is look at your waist circumference, okay? And that's around your belly button. You can just get a measuring tape, and then your height in centimetres, and then your waistline should be half of what your height is. Okay, so that's quite a good guide if you're worried and you're a little bit top heavy, maybe with your shoulders, broad shoulders, and your body mass index is quite high. Measure yourself around and see, okay, that's fine, that's well within the range of healthy weights. So I thought I'd go through a little bit more about fibre, because even though people try to reintroduce it, it can be problematic. So I'll talk a little bit about some of them that can be beneficial. So really well tolerated sources are things like your root vegetables, your carrots, your parsnips, your swede, your turnip. It's a great time of year for that at the moment. And it's having them in stews and casseroles and well cooked, so that you can, they're broken down for you even before they get to your small bowel. And then peeled vegetables can be really, really beneficial. Again, you've got the tough skins and they normally get digested down in your colon. So obviously you need to make sure that you can tolerate little bits of it. So some people get away with a little bit of skin, whereas most people would be much happier peeling their vegetables. And the fruits. So you get some funky little gadgets now that peel your apples for you. They're fun. But they can also help you to, to chop up your apples and have those in a controlled way, in a way that's easier for you. Or if you don't get on with the fresh apple, try it stewed. And that can be a good way of having it. And then the other way of having fruit is tinned fruit. So there's a big variety nowadays. There's in its own juice or in syrups. There's lots of variety. And most of the skins are already off that. So even something like grapes, people struggle with grapes. Some people will peel their fresh grapes, but if you have them tinned, they're peeled for you. So then thinking about your vitamin intake as well as the previous foods, we can think about fruit juices, soups and smoothies. Now all of those obviously have been well cooked, or in terms of soups they've been well cooked, or if there's juices and smoothies, the food processor's done a lot of the work for you. Okay, so if you're really struggling with your digestion, think about all those kitchen appliances that can help you break down your food for you even before you eat it, and enjoy those sorts of foods. So then we think about long-term considerations. People might have had pouches for years, and they're thinking, go to the GP, and their GP starts telling them, oh, well, your blood sugars are going a little bit high. You've got pre-diabetes, okay? And that's in the range just before the blood sugar range before you get to diabetes is known as pre-diabetes. So often at that point, they might ask you to go and see your GP nurse that will tell you to eat high fibre. So it's really, really difficult when you have a pouch or when you're struggling with those fibre foods. Right, what am I supposed to do now? I'm caught in between a rock and a hard place. Do I help my diabetes? Do I help my pouch? What's going to happen? And the same goes for heart problems as well. So if you've got high cholesterol, if you've got any heart issues, arrhythmias, then they'll often ask you to increase the fibre in your diet, eat healthy, change your diet. So what do we do at that stage? So we can think about safe considerations for everybody in terms of what you can manage on having a reduced fibre diet on these conditions. I found out recently that the king and queen actually have their vegetables peeled for them. So if you're wanting to have a bit of a salad, and you do normally struggle with cucumbers and tomatoes, just think of the royal family when you're preparing your salads. So just taking the skins off, removing the seeds, having them as a bit of a colour on your plate can be enough then to actually enjoy your foods. So it's Camilla Parker Bowles' son who's actually looked in the kitchen, the royal family, and he's produced a lovely book with lots of quite low fibre recipes actually. So it'd be interesting to have a look at those. Almond flour is fantastic, particularly for the people who can't tolerate nuts anymore and you're really struggling with things like almonds. The almond flour is actually low in glycemic index, okay? And that means it breaks down nice and slowly in your small bowel and doesn't release its sugars very quickly compared to other cakes and biscuits, which are made from wheat flour. They're broken down very quickly and can cause these big sugar spikes. Almond flour is quite a good option for you. So there's macaroons, but there's also things like almond cakes and things like that are sweet, but don't actually push people's blood sugars up. So that's a nice option. And it can also give you the benefits of almonds and all the minerals and vitamins that it gives you without all the troublesome husks and chewy bits. Then, I could do a whole new presentation on sourdough bread, but I'm just going to touch on it briefly. There's lots of sourdough breads available nowadays. So what we're looking at is if you've got pre-diabetes and they're worried about your blood sugars, you can actually have white sourdough and it won't push blood sugars up as much as white yeasted bread does. So it's a great option to have to swap over to when people tell you, oh, you must eat, wholemeal bread or brown bread. Well, actually, this one's fine. It's going to help manage my blood sugars, and it's nice and low in fibre. Now, you just have to be careful because not all sourdough is actually well fermented. The term itself is not legislated in the UK yet, so lots of companies are just saying, oh, yes, it's sourdough. But if you notice, there's with sourdough on the packaging, and that's the difference. But the best way to tell is if you look on the ingredients and you can see yeast in the ingredients, it means they've used commercial yeast, and that speeds up the process of fermentation, and it's not naturally fermented over 36 hours and things like that to actually break down all the those complex carbohydrates and make it better for your blood sugars. So just keep an eye out for the ingredients. If you see yeast, put it back on the shelf. If there's no yeast, and there's lots available now without yeast, then it's good to manage your blood sugars as well as low fibre. Then we've got things like B12. So lots of people struggle with their vitamin B12. So chicken thighs and chicken legs are fantastic for that because they just give you lots of extra iron, extra B vitamins, more so than the chicken breast part. Just thinking about a few others. So we've got basmati white rice. Again, if people are telling you to have brown rice and wild rice and all these husks and things like that, that might upset your bowels. So basmati white rice is broken a lot slower than what normal white rice is. So that's a great option to have with your meals. Sweet potatoes, if you wanted the skins, or you could take the skins off. Again, they're a kind of slower, low glycemic index form of potatoes, so they're a great addition for your meals. Soups are a winner, and I keep telling people, my husband's family from Romania, they eat soups every day, summer, winter. They just have them every single day. So if you haven't already, fall in love with soups, because they're a fantastic source of nutrition. You get all your vitamins, you get all your complex carbohydrates, you can add anything you want, and it's versatile, okay? So you can just keep looking at different ingredients, different recipes, so that it keeps it interesting. Okay, my mother-in-law is fantastic at doing that. She was making a different soup every day, and it just goes to show what variety there is. And there's some great recipes as well from Fittleworths, if anybody uses those. Also about green spinach smoothies. So that's a great way to get your iron. And it's all broken down for you by the food processor. And you can just get all the good iron from it and absorb it nicely. Okay, so a lovely picture here of my unicorn with a bit of wind. So lots of people with pouches do struggle with windy foods. Okay, so I wanted to briefly talk about these. It can be very difficult to manage, whether it's trapped wind in the form of bloating, or you're finding that you're passing wind and having accidents. Whatever it is, some foods will produce more wind than others. And I have to say, you know, a little bit of wind is normal. Most people will produce a little bit of wind, but if it's excessive and it's really troubling, think about these foods and altering them a little bit. The main issues are beans and pulses. Most people have probably already heard that when they were little. You know, beans make you fart, for the baked beans type situation. But we've also got onions, garlic, and lactose can cause issues as well. So there are ways you can actually prepare your food, and it reduces how much wind is produced from it. So you can still enjoy them, but all you need to do is just change the way they're prepared, okay? Again, this relies a little bit more on home-cooked foods, so it can be a struggle, but some people can manage this. So with your beans, you can actually do what grandmas used to do and buy the dried beans and soak them overnight in water. That isn't the case in commercial beans. They don't do that anymore. So if you do it and you soak them on the windowsill, it releases all the galacto-oligosaccharides that are inside the beans. And then when you throw the water away and you rinse the beans out, most of that problematic part has gone. Okay? Then you can cook them and then add them to your stews and casseroles if that's something you want to do. Or, you know, you can just have small amounts of them. It's whichever way you can tolerate them. It's good to have a little trial and error. With broccoli and cauliflower, it's the stalks that are the problem. So if you unfortunately, it's a bit wasteful, and lots of chefs are encouraging us to reduce our waste. But if you're just taking the stalks off broccoli and cauliflower, that can make it a lot easier for you to tolerate those. Try and avoid having raw onion, because raw onion will ferment quite quickly and become problematic. And the best thing I can say is just buy small onions for cooking. At the moment, what we've done in this country is we've imported the big Spanish onions. So when the recipe calls for one onion, most of us are putting a huge onion in nowadays. Just go back to eating like the little ones. They sell like pickling onions as well. That can be a good way of doing it. And just use a small amount. Chop it up really, really finely. Again, think of your knife as helping you to digest your foods. Break it all up and then cook it really well. And garlic, again, can be really, really difficult, but it's everywhere. All right, so garlic and garlic powder, it's certainly worth looking for. In any packets that you've got in the kitchen, just double check. Does this have garlic in there? You will be surprised, because stock cubes have got garlic in there. I don't remember Grandma ever using garlic for stock, and sausages as well. Okay, so they are creeping into a lot of foods, and the reason for that is that chefs and food producers are reducing the fat intake of foods, and therefore they're replacing it with other flavours like garlic powders. Okay, so that can be really difficult. It can cause a lot of bloating, a lot of wind, so just being aware of it can help you when making those food choices. And then if you're having vegetables, try and avoid one type of vegetable in a large quantity. Try and have things like mixed vegetables, because then you're having lots of little types of vegetables and fibres to break down, rather than a big lot of one type, because that can upset your bowel and it has a lot more work to do to break those particular fibres down. It's happier when it's got a bit of a mixture, because it can delegate to different bacteria and different things, different jobs. Okay, and then thinking about fruits, the difficult fruits to digest and have produce lots of wind are your ones with stones in. Now, that's not so much of a problem this time of year, but in the spring and summertime, plums and peaches, nectarines, apricots, all those sorts of things, they have sorbitol in them, and unfortunately that can break down into a bit of wind, so it's best to avoid those, and instead choose things like your bananas, your citrus fruits, your berries, your pineapple versions. Again, you can have fresh, tinned, whichever you prefer, and bananas are quite tolerated by most people. They do worry about blood sugars, but actually with bananas you can get the small ones, and they are a lot easier to manage than the big bananas available nowadays. And if you do find that dairy is a little bit of an issue for you and you do have problems, try switching over to a lactose-free milk, because it's often the lactose in the milk that's the problem, not the milk itself. So once you make that little swap, most people find that they feel better, but it can still cause problems, so it's worth just doing some experimentation with it. And lactose-free milk's got the same amount of protein, calcium, everything else. They've just put a few enzymes in the milk to break down the lactose, and off you go. Hard cheeses, they're absolutely fine because they're very low in lactose. And foreign cheeses, they've been fermented a lot longer than British cheeses. So if you like manchegos and fetas and all these sorts of different cheeses, maybe try those if you struggle with dairy foods. Yogurts can be quite an interesting conversation in this country because they've changed a lot over the years. They came in, in the 70s and 80s, and there's a plethora of all combinations of how they make them. So what I would say is if you really struggle with dairy, try a plain yogurt and then add your own flavour to it. If that's okay, then you can try other different commercial yogurts. Just because there's so many different manufacturing methods now, you might find one that you can tolerate. If not, stick to the plain. And then just be careful with ice cream. It's not cream anymore. Cream is actually low lactose. They used to make cream and then ice it to make ice cream, but nowadays it's all made with milk. Okay, so that's where the lactose creeps in. So you just have to be a bit careful of the quantity. Some people get away with the scoop, some people don't. So it's just worth testing out for yourself. Again, everybody's gut is different, so it's different. I think so a bit of signposting then. Obviously, the Early Ostomy Association's a wonderful association, and lots of information on their website. Diabetes UK, so if you're worried about pre-diabetes or even avoiding pre-diabetes, there's even sections on Diabetes UK about that and how you can manage to avoid those sorts of problems. They don't just treat it. It's all about prevention nowadays. And the same with Heart UK as well. Fantastic association that are preventing people from having heart problems. They don't just want to treat them. They want to prevent them. And then obviously I belong to the British Dietetic Association, and they've got lots of food facts on their website as well. Please don't just mix it up with the British Dental Association, because they're exactly the same, but if you just type in British Dietetics, then it will come up with their website, and there's lots of fun facts and interesting information if you're interested in more about nutrition. Okay, and that's me, so thank you very much for listening, and I'll take your questions afterwards. Okay, thank you.